Well, welcome to the Gary Neville Podcast. There's only one place to begin, Gary, the game we've just seen between Manchester United and Bournemouth. Match of the season so far?
Yeah, it was a stunning watch, more for a neutral maybe, but even for me, I was really critical after the Everton and West Ham games because of just the nature of the performance. I thought it was really bland. The Everton one where obviously kept 3 at the back and against 1 and they were down to 10 men and there's no urgency, there's not a throwing a kitchen sink at it. Same against West Ham, letting large parts of the game drift. Complete and utter opposite tonight. I can live with that all day long in terms of a performance and a standard because they played really intent, played the ball forward, always played at full pace. We'll come on to the mistakes shortly, but I just think the way in which also when United went 3-2 down and Ruben Amorim then went to 4-4-2 and did the right thing. Forget the system. He did the right thing. He got the right players on the pitch and they looked a massive threat. But credit to Bournemouth. They were, in the first half, I thought they were really... I think they were overrun by United. I thought they were going to be out of the game. I thought that it would be probably 2 or 3-0. But if you don't kill teams off, United, I think you said, had more shots in the first half than any other team this season recorded in the Premier League, which demonstrated their dominance. But still, Bournemouth had 1 or 2 good moments and get the goal and still are in it at half-time. And Jamie Carragher's words just coming out before the second half that Ruben Amorim will be thinking, we should be further ahead in this game. True. The second half was absolute mayhem. Absolute mayhem. But just generally in terms of sort of what would be, and the fans feel the same thing. There were big boos after the West Ham and the Everton game. There weren't the big boos here after this game tonight. There was disappointment, but there were a lot of fans we just seen stayed in the stadium to clap the team because they can live with that. If you're a kid coming to United, my kids have come tonight. My 2 girls have come tonight, and they'll be thrilled walking back across that forecourt. They won't be happy that United haven't won, but they'll have seen a great game of football, and that's what you come to Old Trafford for. You come for entertainment. Of course, come to see your team win. And I get it. You've got to go and win games. You've got to win trophies. You've got to win titles, and we can turn into sort of what would be the fact that this is not good enough in respect of what's happened. But I think getting the entertainment bit right, the performance bit right, the style right, is absolutely critical at this football club. And I enjoyed what I've seen tonight from those red shirts. Defensively, I think it's to be expected when you think that, Martinez came on, but, De Ligt, Maguire, Martinez not playing, and you've got obviously a couple of young defenders. It doesn't look like a defence that's going to keep clean sheets and that's going to keep teams out. It just doesn't look like that. So you're thinking before the game already, you've probably got to score. I said at half-time, I think just after half-time, you probably have to score 4 to win this game, and 4 wasn't enough. It needed to be 5 because both teams looked really vulnerable at the back, and it was probably expected from United, and obviously Bournemouth have been going through a tough patch, but I enjoyed the game so much. I can live watching those types of matches all the time. I can't stand 0-0s. They happen sometimes, and they're a struggle, and you respect defensive sort of solidity, but it can't have bland, letting games drift where teams are passing it along the back. That was a proper game of football, and I enjoyed it.
I mean, there were all sorts of goals tonight. If there was one you could pick out from all of them, is that possible? One you liked in particular? Had the Fernandes free kick, of course.
The Fernandes free kick was sensational. But
this is the thing, when you have a game with so many goals in it like this, almost the fact something doesn't jump out at you is what makes it so great.
Probably the Fernandes free kick is the goal of the night, but yeah, I just thought the Tavernier run for the goal where he then eventually scored from the free kick was fantastic as well. And Bournemouth looked a real threat. If you look at that front 4 for Bournemouth before the game and you saw the United backline, you probably thought they have been struggling. Evan Nielsen, Semenyo, Jimenez I thought was fantastic tonight in Cliver. They've got real talent, that 4, and they've not been at it as much as you would think they should be. And Iriola had asked them before the game, I need my strikers to kick in. Well, that's the big benefit for Bournemouth out of tonight, because I actually thought before the game, if those 4 start to sort of play a little bit, United will be in a bit of trouble because they've got talent. And they did. They scored 4 goals. And deservedly scored 4 goals. They came back, but they were encouraged. They were encouraged by the fact they got to half-time and they were still only within 1.
18 shots on target, the most in a Premier League game this season, 8 goals. In stark contrast to the game you were at yesterday, the North East derby, but one team won that game and got the victory in the end, Sunderland, in what will be remembered for them in the match in which Nick Voldemade scored the winner.
Yeah, look, it wasn't a great game in respect of quality. It was a Newcastle team that were well below the best, and I'll come on to a little bit of detail in a minute on them. Sunderland, again, I didn't think were fantastic, but I thought that their two centre-halves, Alderete, Ballard, I thought the two central midfield pairs, Xhaka and Siddiqui, I thought those four, and actually Brobby up front as well, I thought the spine of the team for Sunderland were really good. And the spine of Sunderland's team were better, in my opinion, than the spine of the Newcastle team. I think in terms of the game, it was always going to be about a moment and something like that happening. Obviously, Voltemada, you don't want that to happen to anybody in a game like that. I had a really bad experience once at Main Road in the last ever derby there with Sean Goulter, where I dilly-dallied on the touchline, and ultimately he'll live with me forever, and he'll have one of those sort of feelings as well. But I just thought, to me, the way in which Newcastle approached the game, it was, I say negative. It was a tactic that I think, if it goes wrong when you're a big club and you're a Champions League team, it really looks bad. Particularly when you're playing a lesser team, as in lesser quality, lesser sort of experience in the Premier League. So for me, I think that Newcastle playing that five across midfield, and it was a five like that were really deep. And I wanted to see Gordon and Elanga be a little bit more in front, and the three a little bit more like that when they were defending, so that they had a little bit more spring to be able to jump and counter-attack from. But they weren't. They were the classic four at the back deep. They were the classic five, which meant that their wide players, Elanga and Gordon, were pinned back. And Voltemada then becomes the isolated centre-forward, who, to be fair, I don't think he's the type of centre-forward that can play up front on his own unless he's got people around him and near him. So I thought it was quite a flawed situation from the first 5 minutes. I said it in commentary. To Elanga and to Gordon, get 5 yards further up the pitch, tuck in a little bit. Not half cheating, but you're on that half and half roll, which means that you're nearer to Voltemada if you win it back, that you can get there. But also, if it goes over your head, you can get back towards your full back to double up. And I just thought they were far too negative in their positions, the two wide players for Newcastle. I also thought the two wide players for Newcastle were really poor in their performance. The levels that they're at. Gordon's a very good player. Langa's a very good player. I thought both of them were well below the standard. They were far better when Murphy and Barnes came on after the goal went in. So yeah, there was underperformance from Newcastle, mentality from Newcastle, and then the final bit for Newcastle was that Sunderland, I just felt, were a bit more determined and a bit more competitive, and Newcastle fans won't like that, because you imagine in that derby to be able to come off that pitch and say they wanted it just that little bit more than you. They did. They absolutely did. They just had that little bit more bite, that bit more competitiveness, that bit more of that. And sometimes it's that wins you a football match, that little edge. You cannot put your finger on it. Obviously, it's a Voltemada header that ultimately is unfortunate with. But just sometimes when you just not got that little bit of aggression, they weren't authoritative on the ball. They were a bit sort of, if you like, lacking in mentality in their positions and how deep they were. And then you've got to then swing the game back the other way from a position whereby it's 1-0 down. And Newcastle did play, I thought, a bit more progressively, and they were a bit better, I thought, when after Sunderland scored. And Guimaraes has got a bit of the Bruno Fernandes about him, hasn't he? He's almost the kid in the playground that takes the goal kicks, the throw-ins, the free kicks, the penalty kicks. He's everywhere, and he looks like he's trying to do everything. It adds a bit of impetus, but not a lot was happening around it. So, yeah, it was a difficult day for Newcastle. But for Sunderland, I said from the very first game of the season, I think when you come up from the Championship, look, they've spent £160 million, so we need to mention that is a hell of an investment. So there should be some return. But players who I think can compete, players who are physical, players who can run from box to box. I didn't think their wide players played particularly well yesterday. I didn't think Traore or Talbi were great, or Lafay. I didn't think they were fantastic, but I did think their spine of their team were really strong and determined. And I think if you've got a good spine in the Premier League, ultimately then you can carry the rest of the team. So Sunderland deserved to win. It was an incredible atmosphere. Before the game was sensational. Obviously, when the goal went in was sensational. At the end of the game was absolutely fantastic. And at the end, I was stuck in the car park for 40 minutes after, which is the usual thing, obviously, away at away grounds, and they close the roads to let the fans go. But the Sunderland fans, when I left 40 minutes after the game, I could still hear them chanting and singing in the thousands. So what a great day and great night for them. It's the first night they've had like that for many years. A great record in this game recently as well. And it was great to be at my first Weir Tyne derby. Weir Tyne derby. Don't get it wrong, Gary. I got it wrong once yesterday, and that was nearly a fatal mistake.
Yeah, just check who's at home. Um, Final word on the title race, obviously not for this season, but over the course of this weekend, Arsenal a little tetchy, Manchester City, are they on one of those runs? And can we discount Aston Villa, of course?
And what a run Aston Villa have been on. But going to Arsenal and City, the two teams that look like they've got the chance to win it, or they have got the chance to win it. I wouldn't be, they shouldn't be panicking Arsenal's camp. I think that they've come through a challenging set of fixtures, a little bit scrappy, well, very scrappy against Wolves on Saturday evening. I didn't think that was a game of glory for them, but they've got to get the balance right between thinking the victory is the most important, we got over the line, but giving yourself a little bit of a slap round the face and say, look, we can't have too many of those types of performances or else we'll end up with a bloody nose. So I think it's that little bit of a wake-up moment. You're coming into a period where there's lots of points to play for. City have got Haaland, they do have Pep, and they have a few more players who've got real quality and experience of being round the block. So they're probably smelling a little bit of blood and thinking, we're on your shoulder, we're coming, and we're going to be there in March, and we're going to be there in April, and can you handle this? But if you're going to win your first Premier League title, it's not going to be handed to you on a plate. Has to be Arsenal's year. I'm absolutely convinced of that. There's nothing that's going to let them off the hook. They've got an incredible squad. They've got stability. I think they're a better team than Manchester City. They proved that in the first few months of the season. But City are dangerous. They're dangerous because they've got that manager who is a prolific winner. They've got a striker who is absolutely world class. He's the player in the league that is absolutely standout. A dream. What a player. So they've got really dangerous sort of what would be characteristics and sort of talent and potential to go and cause upset. But I still think it's Arsenal's. And this moment was probably going to come if Arsenal are sat there now asking themselves the question, did you think it was going to be a bed of roses? Did you think it was going to be plain sailing? Did you think that we were just going to sail home to shore and that Manchester City and Pep Guardiola weren't going to have a little bit of a punch at us? No, the reality is you're going to have that. And in a season of a Premier League, it's a marathon. So that's that moment. It'll happen maybe a bit more over the next few weeks. They might even lose the lead at one point and they might have to then go back. But Arsenal have got to get themselves mentally right for the next 4 or 5 months. It's such a huge moment for the club. And I still think they'll do it, but they've got to make sure that they step up.
And as you say, still a long way to go. Gary, thanks very much.
Thanks, Seb. Thank you.